Hello, my name is Emma and this is my lesson. So I've done the lesson at GCSE level because it's in the middle, and the lesson aim is to understand the meaning of specialised cells and the relationship between the form and function of cells. So I've given a definition here. So specialised cells are cells which have a specific design so that they can fulfil a particular role. And then I've started the lesson with an activity just to gauge what knowledge the students already have on this topic, and also just to introduce it in a fun way. So the task is for students to use their pen to match the cell types to the facts, and most of these they'll probably be able to guess. So for example, needs a tail, they'll probably go for the sperm cell, which would be correct. And then also I've given a little tip with this one, so has lots of mitochondria, even more if you work out, and they'll probably associate working out with muscle, and so they'll correctly go for the muscle cell. But if, it's all about having a bit of fun, so we can of course make corrections afterwards. Next, we move on to some examples of specialised cells. So starting with the nerve cell. So the main body of the nerve cell holds the nucleus and the ribosomes, and it is where the housekeeping activities of the cell take place. So the activities that the cell can't really exist without take place here in the cell body. Attached to the cell body are these dendrites, and these are branch-like structures which receive signals from receptors and other neurons. And nerve cells have these structures to cover a larger surface area. So we're able to receive more signals if we're able to cover a wider space. The axon is the long projection here, which transmits signals away from the cell body. And the reason it's long like this is because it needs to go across the body, and it's thin like this because it's only going in one direction, so it makes sense for it to not be a branch-like structure as with the dendrites. The myelin sheaths are these structures here, and they are insulative coverings which speed up the transmission of signals, otherwise known as nerve impulses. And not all nerve cells or neurons have myelin sheaths, and you can experience this if you've experienced this if you've ever put your hand under a hot tap, for example. And I'm not telling you to do that by any means, but if you've already done it, you know that you get that delayed pain. Once you've already moved your hand away, that's when you sort of experience the pain. It's quite strange. You get the pain like maybe a second afterwards. So yeah, an example of where a neuron is not myelinated and you get a delayed response. It's quite strange, but there you go. So the axon terminal, which is here, is where the signal is passed on to the next neuron. So it's going from the dendrites down here and then to the axon terminal, always in that direction. Next we have the sperm cell. The head of the sperm cell contains the nucleus, which only has half the number of chromosomes of a non-sex cell, and this is because the egg or the ovum will provide the other half. So obviously this lesson's not on reproduction, but just giving you a bit more on the sperm cell. That's the head there, and the acrosome on the top of the head, which you see, has enzymes which will allow the sperm to gain entry into the egg. I believe at GCSE level you don't need to know the term acrosome, but if you like science then it's a little bit more, isn't it? So so the middle section of the sperm cell has lots and lots of mitochondria to give the sperm the energy to move. So a lot of students remember mitochondria as the powerhouse of the cell, and given that this particular cell needs to be able to swim and win a very important race to the egg, it needs a lot of energy and thus needs a lot of mitochondria. And it also needs a tail, otherwise known as the flagellum, which allows the sperm to swim to the egg. So next we have the red blood cell, which has a very characteristic biconcave shape, and this is to increase its surface area so that it can be more efficient at exchanging materials with other cells. So the circulatory system is one of two transport systems in the body, and it's of course vitally important. So red blood cells are picking up oxygen, dropping it off, picking up carbon dioxide and dropping it off, and also dropping off nutrients, picking up waste for it to be removed from the body and whatnot. So extremely important that it's very efficient at doing so, and the reason it is because of its increased surface area and also its lack of a nucleus. So the lack of a nucleus means that this particular cell is able to pick up more oxygen, and it does so with a protein called hemoglobin, which carries oxygen and carbon dioxide and gives it that characteristic red colour. And it's also very small in size, and this means it can fit through the smallest human blood vessels. Next we have muscle cells. So as you can see, there are various different types, and they're commonly known as muscle fibres because of their thread-like appearance, and they have an elongated shape to allow contraction proteins to overlap each other and facilitate movement. So again, the structure is relating to its function. They contain many mitochondria because they require a lot of energy for movement. So of course we need energy for movement, and we won't go very far without muscle. Muscle gives us movement. Mitochondria gives muscle energy for movement. So as a final activity, I'm asking the student to think of a mechanism which could be used by a cell which is specialised to keep dirt and bacteria out of the lungs. Perhaps nature has already come up with it. So they might already know what cell I'm referring to that does this, but it would also be fun to kind of see them think outside the box. Of course, that's always a good feature of a scientist, or a scientific way of thinking maybe. Broadly, so I've just mentioned here, broadly speaking, what mechanism could accomplish this function? Would this mechanism need to be a coordinated action between multiple cells? How will the dirt and bacteria be dealt with once it is out of the respiratory tract? What would be the likely consequences of not having this function in place? And feel free to draw if this helps. And of course, I've put at the bottom which cell actually accomplishes this function. Thank you very much for watching and listening, and I hope you enjoyed it, and apologies for being a little bit over the time. Thank you.